On the morning of August 1st, 1966, shots ring out from the observation deck of the clock tower on the University of Texas campus. It marks the infamous beginning of the modern era of mass shootings in America.
I'm Sarah Ferris, true crime podcaster.
And I'm Catherine Schweit, the former head of the FBI's active shooter program.
And you're listening to Stop the Killing.
You know, people always ask me, who are the shooters? Who are the shooters? How can we find the shooters? And FBI research gives us an average age of 35. And some people think that all the shooters are teenagers and 22-year-olds. But our listeners, of course, know better. They know that the average age of a shooter is older because most shootings, in fact, occur in places of business, not schools. But in these types of public shootings, we don't often see shooters who are really in the senior category. And that's what we have here. Now, I will say that many years ago when I was working with the FBI, we had a 87-year-old shooter at the Holocaust Museum.
And we've done an episode on that. That was one of our first episodes, wasn't it?
Right.
Back in,
yeah.
I think even season 1.
Yes, I think season 1. And he was a Nazi sympathizer and a horrible person in so many ways that we can't describe. But please go back and listen to the podcast if you'd like to know. And he was 87, and that was kind of an older marker for us. We just don't normally see shooters who are that old. Although not to say that we don't have people in their 40s and 50s, occasionally in their 60s. But the case that I want to talk about today is the Star Ballroom Dancing Studio case, where our shooter was 72 years old.
Wow.
Or 72 years young.
Well, I'll be saying 72 years young, I think, when I get to 72. It's just so unusual. I mean, I'm so intrigued by this case because to me, it seems like you've got through life when you get to 72 and, you know, you haven't gone off the guardrails, that you kind of managed to get through without doing anything too crazy. And then all of a sudden.
So here's the thing about that. When you say, so all of a sudden, I really want to address that.
Yeah,
but before
I'm sure you do.
Before
My bad. I know I'm going to get the old slap. What's the rest for that one?
listeners are already like wagging their fingers going, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah.
When will she learn? When will she learn? I'm a slow learner.
If you didn't have such a cute accent and you weren't so nice, I mean, I'm just saying.
I know.
This actually is a horrible situation that occurred while I was right out in California in January. January 2023, I was out working in California on a number of things with some clients and driving the coast. And I drove through this area, Monterey Park, where this shooting occurred. The really bad part, and the reason I mentioned in January is this occurred during the Lunar New Year Festival. It's a holiday period. And I say their holiday because this Star Ballroom Dancing Studio was in an completely Asian community. It's very popular. People take dancing lessons and people dance there every night. And a lot of those people are the ages of grandparents, and it's their social world. You're 22 and you go to the bar, they go to the dance hall. So during the Lunar New Year, the celebrations were going on all day. This is one of the first days. Then in the evening, people went to the dance studio, as they often did. So this was late at night. It was actually after 10 o'clock at night, just after 10 o'clock. So
wow, past my bedtime, and I'm not 72.
Yeah. Well, you just need to up your game a little bit there, honey. That's what I think. There were dozens of people in there, doing the waltz and the foxtrot and the tango. And it was just a fun, crazy place that people frequented for years. So understanding that this was a 72-year-old, the patrons were often in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. These are people who had maybe danced at this dance studio for 20 years.
Wow.
For fun. This
is a real community hub.
Exactly. Very much so. Very much so. And the 72-year-old comes into this studio just after 10 o'clock, 10:20-ish, and begins to fire.
Wow.
Everywhere. everywhere, everywhere. And in moments, 11 people are killed.
Oh, wow.
He fires 42 rounds, and there are 10 dead within moments at the scene. One dies later, 10 injured. It's the worst
Mhm.
shooting that's ever happened in Los Angeles County. Understanding that
Wow,
Los Angeles,
really?
yeah, is a
Hmm.
huge, right? That's a huge community, right?
Yeah.
Which, you think, oh, this is a big city. They have lots of violence. This is the worst shooting in LA County ever.
Wow. And
And
it's
they're,
also important to note too,
Mhm.
doesn't California have some of the strictest gun regulations?
They do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay.
They do. They have laws that do not allow you to conceal carry, where other states, you not only can conceal carry, meaning that you can carry a pistol on your person that people can't see. The concept behind, and people sometimes say, what does that mean, conceal carry? The concept behind open carry and conceal carry is that if you are openly carrying the weapon, meaning you have a gun on your waist in a holster or
Yeah.
something, people can see it. At least people are aware of it. Eh,
It's cold comfort
And
to me, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, carry
I
on.
know, and you can see the back and forth with it though, right? Some
Yeah.
people might say, "Oh, well, at least I know if somebody has a gun." In a concealed carry, you don't know who's carrying a gun under
Yeah.
any circumstance. You're getting into an argument with somebody who's pumping, as you would say, petrol, pumping gas at the station, and you get into an argument, and then they pull out a gun that's underneath their jacket and kill you. So, to your question, California does have, and it has had since President Reagan was the governor of
Yeah.
California. He signed the Mumford Act, which severely restricted the rights of gun owners in the state of California. And then ironically went on to become a Republican president, praising the National Rifle Association. But
Wow.
yeah, I know. That's a big summary. I shouldn't make such a swathy statement about the president, but he did sign the Mumford Act when he was the governor. The state is very strict on gun regulations and carrying them around, buying them, and things like that compared to many other states in the country.
One question I've got for you
Mhm.
before you go on is what was the weapon?
I mean, at 42 rounds, he's carrying a semi-automatic rifle in
Okay.
this case.
Yeah.
Semi-automatic, meaning that every time you pull the trigger, a round goes. Automatic, meaning that it
Mhm.
loads a new round into the chamber and as soon as you fire one.
Yeah.
So he fired this semi-automatic. It had a high capacity magazine with it, meaning that he could have a whole bunch of rounds together. This high capacity magazines. I have a handgun that holds 10 rounds. Um,
Right.
Others that hold 16. A high capacity magazine might be 20 or 25 or 50 or even 100. There are 100
Right.
round capacity, high
Okay.
capacity
So
magazines.
it's very easy to do damage with all of that
Yeah,
firepower.
and both of those are illegal. What he was carrying were both illegal in
Oh,
California because I'll tell you why, dot, 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 down the road,
yeah,
just a second.
do.
There are so many horrible facts about the victims. In fact, one of the victims was the original owner of the dance studio. I can tell you that this shooting was in January. And just recently, I read that the owner said she may not ever reopen. So, this is in just over 15 minutes. This
Yeah.
family owned business, all of these people were mowed down. And it was just so sad because the people who were inside were like husbands and wives,
I was gonna
people
say that, the
people who
couples
met
that have
their spouses there,
yeah,
it's just
tragic.
there
That's so
were the ages of the people who were killed. I wrote these down because I want all of us to appreciate this loss. The ages of the people who were killed, there were 6 women, 5 men. 57 was the youngest person.
oh,
57, 62, 63, 64, 65, 67, 68. 2 72-year-olds and a 76-year-old.
wow.
So I think that if I miss somebody, it's another 70-year-old. But that's who died. People who were in their 60s and 70s, who were grandmothers, right? Primarily grandfathers.
Oh,
People who worked hard and retired,
people who
immigrated to this
haven't
country.
retired yet.
Or
That's the
haven't, right?
thing, like
Yeah.
they've worked all of their lives.
And they're still working. in many of these, because of the Asian community, there were people
Mhm.
who had emigrated,
Yeah.
their families, they'd raised their families here, the American dream, all of that concept, and mowed down, right? And just boom. So sad.
It really is. I mean, I know that we talk about these all the time, and every single one is sad. But sometimes when you just humanize those numbers into people in your own life, and you think
Mhm.
about, that's my parents' age, that's the grandparents of my
Right.
children.
It really speaks to what is gun violence and how does it impact a community.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
this community has 2 dancing studios at the time, and one of them's closed now. And it's a place that everybody went there every day. Yeah. So horrible. The shooter who did this, he was 72 years old, and he had emigrated to the United States in the 1990s. So he had been here for a while, and in
Mhm.
fact had danced at that studio and had taught some dance lessons at that studio through the
Oh,
years.
interesting.
But this shooter, he lived kind of nearby at one point, but then he moved away. When he did all this shooting, he left. So he
Yeah.
gets in his car and he takes off and he leaves. But he doesn't just leave and go home. He leaves and he drives to Alhambra, which is nearby, a few
Mm.
miles away, where there's another dance studio.
What the heck? What?
Yeah.
All right. So, how far does he get with that? Because obviously, my burning question is going to be, what has he got against dance studios
Well,
after
this is
that?
where good happens, right? This is where good happens.
Yeah.
The other dance studio in Alhambra is owned by a family, and their 26-year-old son is working in the front desk.
Right.
And in comes a 72-year-old man with a weapon, and he intends to do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And the surveillance camera gives us a video of what happens afterwards. The kid sees him and reaches out and grabs the weapon. Run, hide, fight.
Wow.
He grabs the weapon and he begins to struggle with this 72-year-old. Now he is only 26, right?
Youth's
So
on
he
his
is,
side, surely.
it is, but I will say that he put up a fight. The 72-year-old kind of put up
Yeah.
a fight trying to hold on to the weapon. And
Mm.
the 26-year-old is pulling and struggling with the weapon and finally yanks it away from him and clearly is telling him to get out of there and go away and get out of
Yeah.
there and go away. So he doesn't tackle him or anything like that. But what he knows is behind him are a whole bunch of patrons dancing for the Lunar New Year in the
Yeah.
room right next to him.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what the backstory is, that this guy's already
Right.
gone in and, you know,
Right. He has no
trashed the other
idea.
studio.
Exactly. He has no idea that this guy has just come a few minutes earlier from
Yeah.
attempting to kill 20 people and in fact was successful with 11 of them. So he struggles, he takes the gun, he sends this guy back out of the studio, and he calls police who say, "Oh, hey, maybe these are tied together." And the police put this together, and it takes a little bit of time to try to figure out what is going on. And they don't put out an alert to the public. So, I mean, and there's a reason. I mean, it's kind of interesting. But then the subject they eventually track down. They've got a description of the car. And as police eventually find the subject, as they approach the van that he's sitting in, he kills himself. So he's going to kill himself, but
Yeah.
he takes 20 people with him and
Good
terrorizes
Lord.
2 neighborhoods.
Mate. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And also, when you're talking about how it took a while for the police to connect the two things, it must have been one of those nights on the 911 desk where you're just like, hold on, a dance studio and a dance studio.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
they must have just,
Yep.
1 plus
So
1
they're
equals
busy
2. Like,
responding. Right.
yeah,
Right over here in Monterey Park. And then a few miles away in Alhambra,
yeah.
they find another dance studio. And so when they respond to the second studio, they look at the surveillance camera and they get some images of the guy
Right.
and
Mhm.
they begin to see that they have a shooter who they think probably was the shooter at their first dance studio. I mean, it's not like there are dance studios in every corner, right?
No,
These
exactly.
aren't 7-Elevens and McDonald's, right? They identify him and they are able to then kind of go back to where he lived and piece together some things. So I wanted to just mention a couple of things though about the subject and why this is relevant to everybody who's listening, because this 72-year-old shooter had met his wife at this dance studio, right? And then they
Okay.
divorced. He knew and had danced at both studios. He knew a lot of people at them, although I didn't think he was targeting particular people at the studio.
Right.
But in an interview with his ex-wife later, she said he wasn't violent, but he was quick to anger.
Right.
But here's probably the most interesting thing for me when I look at the subject and where I say, how can you find the next shooter? How can you find the next person who might do this? He had been to the police station a couple of times, indicating that he believed that people around him in his family were trying to poison him and were stealing things from him.
Wow.
So he thinks that people have been trying to poison him or stealing things. He's 72 years old. He probably should not have weapons.
Oh, these are not
I'm
legally
sorry.
obtained weapons, are they?
Actually, they're not legally obtained weapons.
Right.
When they find legal process that allows them to look inside his house, they find out that he has been manufacturing gun suppressors in his
Well,
in
you're
his
going to
house.
have to do gun suppressors for dummies here. What's a gun suppressor?
It is a thing that muffles the noise,
Oh, so like a
and
silencer.
Mhm.
On TV, that's what they
On
call it.
TV they call it, right? And
My only
he's
point
been
of reference, Catherine.
exactly, that's true. I mean, this is not like somebody who bought a gun and, then went out and shot a bunch of people up. He's familiar with weapons from whatever his background was through the years. And so he's been, in fact, manufacturing suppressors. And if you're manufacturing them, you're probably selling them to people. So, in
Okay.
fact, this guy has this other life that people maybe aren't familiar with.
Right. So is suppressing manufacturing illegal?
Yes. He doesn't have a license to do that. And the fact that he thought his family was poisoning him
Yeah.
and stealing things, a lot of times, especially I hear this from a certain subset of people who I deal with a lot who say, well, did he have a big criminal background? He probably had a criminal background, which most of the time, none of them do. And because, when you have a criminal background that says you're a mass shooter or an active shooter, you probably aren't having access and ability to do that again because you're probably either dead or in jail.
Yeah.
But I don't know why people can't seem to connect on that. But he, in fact, was charged when he was in his 40s once with unlawful possession of firearms. So he was not
Ooh.
unfamiliar with that, unfamiliar
Yeah.
with firearms. And so people around him probably knew that he had firearms and probably not legal firearms
Yes.
and the ammunition, and he was able to purchase it. And, you can buy ammunition through the mail here and have it shipped to your house, thousands of rounds if you want. But I think
My
the thing that
goodness.
was most telling for me, yeah, I know, was that he said his family was poisoning him and stealing things.
Yeah.
That can be an early sign of dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to the police station a couple of times and mentioned that. And the police said to him, well, come back, with some evidence and, we'll talk. And he never did.
And
So
in hindsight, would the police go back and actually look at that as somebody who's investigating this case to try and work out actually what factors did put him on this pathway?
well, here's what happens when you have a shooter who kills themselves. A lot of
Yeah.
times there's so limited police investigative, time.
Mhm.
They say, well, this isn't an open case. There isn't anything else to investigate. We know who did it, and we might not know why he did it. That's not part of an investigation. Motivation, people always want motivation, but motivation is very rarely a factor that's super relevant when it
Yeah.
comes to prosecuting a case. Here you have a subject who's already committed suicide. I'm sure they spoke to different people. They pieced the case together and said, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the same guy who came to the station and said this and such, and that's why we have contact information on him. But pretty much that's it, right?
Must be
That's
so
it.
unsatisfactory for the victims' families from that
I think
perspective
it
to
is.
not have
I,
an understanding of, okay, was this a person that was mentally unwell. Or, I mean, I don't know if that would give you any comfort actually as a victim's family, but
Yeah, and I think it's frustrating, right? People get frustrated because they don't know, well, why did he do this? And why did he do this? Because they feel like that might give them some satisfaction. But a lot of people who I know who have been victims of these types of crimes say in the long run, they just have to resolve to deal with it. And knowing more about the subject or knowing more about the why doesn't bring about a lot more healing. So it's kind of, hard for them. I do look at all of these facts in this shooting, 20 people shot, 11 of them dead, and say, who saw him before he came back to the dance studio where he used to dance? Who knew that he was working on these suppressors? Who knew that he was potentially having some challenges over his mental health if he was, by claiming that everybody was stealing this? And maybe people were stealing things from him and trying to poison him. He didn't bring any proof for that. And that makes me wonder. He obviously probably accused other people in his family of that. And so they might have seen this too. And
yeah.
I know that it's great to buy a gun and have a gun, but I worry about the millions and millions and millions of guns that have been purchased in the United States over the last 4 or 5 years. And as people age, those guns will still be available in those homes.
That is true, which might actually lead us on to next week's episode, because we're going to be doing another case with an elderly shooter, aren't we?
Oh, yes. Part 2, elderly shooter, next week.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. Any parting words on this particular case?
Because you can have a gun, legally or illegal, doesn't mean you should keep the gun. So pay attention to those around you.
Thanks for listening. And if you want to know more, Catherine's book, Stop the Killing, is out now. For more details, go to catherineschweit.com. Please consider also supporting our independently made podcast. It's simple to do. Go to patreon.com/Stop the Killing. And for as little as the price of a latte a month, you can be part of the solution to stop the killing. Patreon rewards range from official do-gooder status to ad-free episodes, autographed books, and opportunities to connect with us directly for your business, school, church, or even just a book club chat. But just knowing that you are part of a movement that has the power to make your community safer, well, that's got to taste better than a skinny cappuccino any day. So please head to patreon.com/Stop the Killing now and polish off your do-gooder halo, and make sure to include your name so we can give you a shout out. This podcast is a Community podcast production. That's Con with an N. If you want more content, then head over to Community Podcast at Instagram, where you'll find trailers on more binge-worthy true crime, like the award-winning podcast Conning the Con. And check out our show notes for all the links mentioned. Finally, if you want one takeaway action that you can do right now that can help make our community safer, please share, rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. Everybody needs to know that they hold the keys to see something and say something. Together, we can stop the killing.
It's one of those things you hope never happens, but you better train for it, because it will happen, and it will happen in places you wouldn't expect. Be ready for it.